You, got, you guys are trying to make it hard for me to speak. Have my wife introduce me. Man, the finest person that ever introduced me to date. Um, Stop that. So the story is told of a successful businessman. He was so successful, he had built up an empire. He had a lot of people working for him. And it came a time where he had to actually leave for a while. Now, I'm not sure why he had to leave, whether it was personal reasons or business reasons, but he had to go on some kind of a journey. So what he did is he reached out to 3 of his employees, and he went to them individually. These were special employees. So he went to the first one, the second one, and the third one, and he gave them some instructions for while he was going to be away. He wrote it all down for them so that they knew exactly what they would be responsible for, and then he gave them some money. The first one, he gave $5,000. The second one, he gave $2,000. And the third one, he gave $1,000, and he told them, go and take care of business. So he went on a long trip. And eventually he came back. But while he was away, these 3 guys had some stuff to do. So what they did, the first one that got $5,000, he went out and he started to invest in himself. He invested in his teammates. He invested in resources, and he built something bigger and doubled the money. The second guy got $2,000, so he went and he did similar to the previous guy. He invested in himself. He invested in his team. He invested in resources, and he doubled his money. Now, the third guy was smart. He knew his boss, and he knew that his boss would return and that his boss wanted all this money back. So what he decided to do was put it in a safe, lock it up, because he knew he would have something to show when his boss came back. Now you're probably thinking, man, this sounds kind of familiar. It does. And maybe I've added a few details, embellished a little bit, but it comes from a story in Matthew 25. And I want to read to you from the Message translation what happened when the master came back. This is what it says. I love this version. It says, after a long absence, the master of those 3 servants came back and settled up with them. The one given $5,000 showed him how he had doubled his investment. Good work. You did your job well. From now on, you will be my partner. He went to the second guy, the same thing happened, so I'm going to skip that part. But let's look at what happened when he came to the third guy. The servant given 1,000 said, Master, I know you have high standards and hate careless ways, that you demand the best and make no allowances for error. I was afraid I might disappoint you. So I found a good hiding place and secured your money. Here it is, safe and sound. He was proud. He had done good. The master was furious. That's a terrible way to live, he said. It's criminal to live cautiously like that. If you knew I was after the best, why did you do less than the least? The least you could have done would have been to invest the sum with the bankers, where at least I would have gotten a little interest. Take that 1,000 and give it to the one who risked the most. And get rid of this play it safe. Who won't go out on a limb? Throw him out into utter darkness. So today I want to talk to you on the topic of the injustice of playing it safe. God, you do you as I try to stand here and do me. Speak to your children and inspire them to not play it safe. Amen. All right, I want to tell you a story of myself. This is going to really be my testimony, my journey of stuff. So I was born and raised on the beautiful Caribbean island of St. Martin, and I stayed there until the age of 17. Now, I was what you would call not so good of a student. At a young age, I just wanted to have fun, right? I wanted to hang out with my friends. I wanted to watch TV. I remember after school, I would come home and get on my bike, and after eating lunch, I would ride down the road, and I would hang out with my friends, and we would just hang out for the rest of the day. I would come home. I didn't do my homework. I wasn't a fan of this homework thing that they used to give me all the time. I couldn't fully understand why they gave it to me because I didn't really need to do that to understand the stuff. I just wanted to understand and do. So, as a result, I didn't do much homework. And I got into this habit of just having fun and getting decent grades and passing and doing what I needed to do. At the age of 17, I moved from St. Martin. I remember the senior year of high school, I was preparing for college, and there was one place I wanted to go, and that one place was Andrews University. It was the only school I applied to because there was no other option in my little brain at the time. This was the place for me to be. So I came to Andrews University, and I was excited. I felt like Eddie Murphy in Coming to America, like, yeah! I'm coming to the big city of Berrien Springs. We're gonna do this. So I came to Andrews University, and I had a blast. I had so much fun. There were so many people, so much to do, people from all over the world, and I was here. Whew. Now, I hadn't changed necessarily. So the same student in high school was the same student in college, and unfortunately, even though homework didn't count for your grade as much in St. Martin, evidently homework counts for your grade in America. So I remember, just as an example, I took general chemistry from Dr. Murray. And in general chemistry, you had to hand in 3 homework assignments every week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Is it still the same? I don't know. Yeah? So I'm like, yep, I know. So I did hand in my 3 homework assignments for the quarter back then, and that was it. I love that laugh. I handed in 3 homework assignments for the entire semester. Listen. The first 4 years of college for me was rough. Some of you are like, wait, the first 4 years? Isn't it supposed to only be 4 years? But my first 4 years, I didn't do that well. My first semester, I remember, I went home for Christmas break, and I was excited to be home. You know, I went to America. I'm the guy from America that comes back to the island. And I remember waiting to get my grades. And then I got that email that said, your grades are live, you can go and check it out. So I went and I logged into my account, and I saw that I got a 2.0 that semester. Now, I had to tell my parents, who at the time Andrews back then was like $16,000 a year. And I know some of you are like, what? Only $16,000? It was $16,471. And for someone coming from where I was coming from, that was a whole lot of money. And they were spending all this money, and I came back for Christmas and told them that I got a 2.0. Needless to say, they weren't that happy. But I made a commitment to them. I said, don't worry, Mommy and Daddy, I am not wasting your money. You send me back. I'm going to do better. So I went back, and I did not get a 2.0 that semester. I got a 1.2. And I had to go, listen, you understand Caribbean parents? I had to tell my Caribbean parents that now I went back and came back with a 1.2. Mercy. All right, so I continued on this journey, and like I said, my first 4 years of college didn't go very well. So in my 5th year of my 4-year degree, I remember sitting in a systems physiology class. And in that class, Dr. Stout started talking about the nervous system. And he started talking about the neuron. And I started to listen to what he was saying, and I was so fascinated by what was happening inside of this one little neuron. And I was thinking to myself, wait a minute, God, all of this stuff is happening inside of me? And I got so excited about this neuron. I went like crazy about the neuron. And I started studying like I had never studied before. I started studying things that I wasn't even required to study because of how excited I was about this nervous system. And as a result of that, I got the top grade in that entire class, and I had experiences of helping others to do well in that class. I got so excited about the human body and physiology and all that stuff that I remember one exam, he asked the question, can you explain everything that happens with a photon of light when it enters, from the time it enters into your retina all the way to where the processing is happening in the brain? And I knew this information so well that I just started making up stories. So my answer to the question was like this. So a guy walks into a building, and across the way, he sees a hot chick. This is literally what I wrote in the thing. I was just having fun. And he was so fascinated by the way the photon of light bounced off of her body and entered into his eyes. And I just went on and told this very elaborate story, making sure to include all of the relevant details that I needed to get 100% on the test. But it was something woke up inside of me. Now, I did so well in that class that Dr. Stout approached me. I think at that time, I had done a little better, so my cumulative GPA was something like 2.5. And he approached me and he asked me if I wanted to go on and do a master's in neurobiology and work directly with him. And I was like, yeah, man, this is so exciting. I get to be all up in the neurons. And, this is going to be great. So I went on for my master's, and my plan was to go on for a PhD and then come back and teach people about the neuron. I'm going to be a professor in a university, and I'm going to be teaching systems physiology one day. But then something happened. I started doing research on crickets. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not a big fan of crickets. I remember the first time Dr. Bungu introduced me to the crickets. I'm not afraid of insects, but I don't want him to know. So he was like, oh, come on, let's go into this lab. I was like, yeah, no problem. Let's go into this lab. And there was these huge buckets of, like, hundreds and thousands of crickets. And he told me to pick one up. I was like, yeah, I could pick one up. No big deal. And I put my hand inside the bucket, and a cricket jumped on my hand. I started to scream. And he was dying of laughter. But anyhow, I got carried away there. All right, so the plan, PhD, university professor. But then I realized I don't enjoy this research stuff. So I gave up on that plan. Then we got married in 2006, and my wife and I moved to Great Lakes Adventist Academy, where I was the math and science teacher there, and we did that for 5 years. But while I was there, something happened. I started not feeling satisfied with what I was doing. And actually, there was a point where I stumbled onto the internet and the world of online business. And I said to myself, man, let me do this kind of on the side. And I started doing this on the side, and it came a point where I was doing so much of this thing on the side that, if I wasn't eating or I wasn't working, I was doing my business, and I was just going in all kinds of different directions. And eventually I said, you know what? You remember that dream of wanting to be a university professor? Well, obviously I don't have a PhD. I can't do that right now. But what's to stop me from applying the same principles that I was learning about online business and blogging and videos and YouTube and so on and teach it online. I don't need a PhD to teach people. Somebody resonates with that. I don't need no PhD. I'm not saying don't get a PhD, please. Don't call home and say that Leslie Samuel said I don't need a PhD. I'm not saying that. But I decided to start my online business where I would teach exactly what I wanted to teach. And the first video was, what is a neuron? And then, what is an action? I was like, yeah, I'm going to teach this stuff. And I'm going to have fun doing it. And that's exactly what I did. Fast forward, I think a year or two. There was an opening in the Doctor of Physical Therapy program here for an anatomy professor. And I'm thinking, I saw it, and when I saw it, there were a series of things that had happened right before I saw it, that when I saw this letter, I thought to myself, oh shoot, this is my next job. Now that didn't make any sense. I'd never taken anatomy. I don't have a PhD. I am unqualified for this. But God told me, I remember calling my wife, and I said, honey, there's a letter in the mail from an anatomy professor in the Doctor of Physical Therapy program. It's about to get interesting. Literally. There was no logic there. So I applied for the position. They saw my resume, and they were like, what is this guy doing? And he literally put it at the bottom of the pile, like, well, that obviously didn't make any sense. Why am I looking at that? He told me this after the fact. I go in to talk to him, and I said, and I remember him sitting down like this, like, so, like, why are you here? And I said to him, well, you guys have this position, and I came to apply, and I wanted to show you some of the things that I've been working on. And he was kind of like, okay. So I took him to the computer, and I remember him looking at my website and clicking through. He went kind of from like this to like, And then he started clicking around, and then he was like, you did this? And I said, yeah. And he said, hold up. I want to take you around to meet all the people on the committee that make the decision, just so that they could have a name to put with the face. And I'm going to make a long story short. I went in to interview with them. You know, when God tells you that you are supposed to go in this direction, sometimes you get a little bold. And I remember sitting down there, and I told them, you know, I am like probably the least qualified person for this position. But I believe God is doing something. And quite frankly, this is what I told them. I don't know, anyhow. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter what you think or what you decide. Because God is the one that is doing something here. And if He wants it, it doesn't matter what you think. I know. It probably wasn't the smartest thing to think. But I said to them, listen, if I get this job, I'm going to praise God. If I don't get this job, I'm going to praise God. Because I know that all things work together for our good, for those who love God and were called according to His purpose. So I may not know if this is, I'm just moving because this is what I feel God is telling me to do. But if it's not, it's all good. Because God is still God. So that same day, they called me and they said, we want you to have this job. I was like, praise God. Now, I stayed with that job, and I loved that job. I was teaching anatomy, never took anatomy before. Dissecting cadavers, never seen a dead body before. But I knew God. 1.2 GPA, but God. Sucked at school, but God. Listen. So the story doesn't end there. A year or two later, my wife and I had our son Noah. What's the about that? Jeez, we had a son. Stop it. We had our son Noah. But there was something going on where I was working on my business on the side. I was teaching full-time classes that I never took and struggling to keep up with all of that. They had me working on a PhD that they were paying for, and I was running around like a chicken without a head, or whatever you say. And I didn't have time to be with my family. That was like one thing that I was always afraid of. You know, you have a job and you're working, you're doing so much, and your family's at home. I felt like my wife was a single mother. And it didn't sit well with me. And then my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer. And when she was diagnosed with breast cancer, she's in St. Martin. She had to travel to Colombia. I went down to Colombia and I spent a few days, but then I had to get back to work. And it just didn't feel right. And I felt as if God was telling me it's time for something else. I went to my wife and I told her what I was feeling. And evidently, God wasn't just speaking to me, He was speaking to my wife. And my wife said, I think you should leave your job. I was like, word, sweet, I'm done. So next day, I go in to speak to my boss. I'm like, listen, this is what's going on. I'm leaving this. Now, mind you, this was my dream job. There wasn't no, I'm going to become a professor, and then ultimately, no, that was it for me. So I left my job as a university professor, and I remembered, listen, I didn't leave my job because my business was doing great. I left my job on June 31st. July 1, rent was due. I was the single income earner, and I didn't know how we were going to pay rent. It didn't make sense. But we felt as if God was saying, I have something different for you. And if God says that, you go. I remember a day my wife came to me and she said, we need money, we need to buy diapers. And I said, I know, but we don't have any money. Four or 5 months later, my business had grown to the point where I was matching my salary as a university professor. Since then, it's gone up. Since then, I've had the opportunity of meeting so many awesome people, traveling all across the world and speaking to audiences about things that I am passionate about. I'm not saying this to boast, and if you think that I'm saying this to boast, then you don't know my God, because that's nothing. There's a quote that I absolutely love. It's by William H. Murray, and it says this: until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one fundamental truth, that ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans. So, are you ready for what the one fundamental truth is? It's this: that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. I want to rewrite that. As a Christian, the moment one definitely commits oneself, then divine providence moves too. There's a story in the Bible that just fascinates me. It's about Joshua. So these guys, the Gibeonites, signed a treaty with the Israelites, and the 5 Amorite kings were like, listen, these Gibeonites, they joined forces with the Israelites. Let's go and wipe them out. So the Gibeonites knew that they were coming, and they sent a message to Joshua saying, do not forsake us, come and save us. So Joshua went to God, and God told Joshua, don't be afraid of these guys. I have given them into your hands. Joshua and the Israelites were like, sweet, God is behind us, let's do this. So these guys marched all night and came up to the 5 Amorite kings and their armies early in the morning. And they were so surprised and confused. It says God confused them. But here's the thing. They started fighting these guys and killing people and all this kind of stuff. And then hailstones started falling from the sky and knocking out all these guys. And it said that more people were killed by the hailstones than by the entire Israelite army. Listen, if you know that God is sending you in a certain direction, go. Here's why. It's not just you. Once you commit yourself, divine providence moves too. The quote continues, all sorts of things occur to help one that would not have otherwise occur. One second. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner of unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance that no man could have dreamed would have ever come his way. Whatever you can do or dream you can do, begin it. Because boldness has power, genius, and magic in it. Begin it now. I'm here to tell you that I believe, now this may not be for everyone, but I believe there are some people under the sound of my voice right now that are playing it safe. Because you know what? Okay, so maybe you love children and you also love teaching, and everyone said that you should be an elementary teacher. So, all right, well, I'm going to just be an elementary teacher. I feel God telling me there's something more that I can do, but I'm going to play it safe. There's some of you here that are running from God to the seminary. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being in a seminary. Now, I know somebody getting nervous right now, but listen. If that's not what God has for you, if what God has for you looks different from that, then you shouldn't be there. Whether it's seminary, whether it's teaching, whether it's a lawyer, whether it's a doctor, you guys are growing up at a very interesting time right now. A time where individuals, all of you, can have an impact on the world in ways that you could have never done it before. You're growing up in a world where there are people that you're looking at like Casey Neistat and who else? Logan Paul and all these guys and Sean Duras and all these guys that are going online and creating content, and you see what can be done by creating content, putting it out there in the world, and inspiring others. I'm here to tell you that the moment you definitely commit yourself, divine providence moves too. So I want to end with a story that's going to sound somewhat familiar. There was a very successful man. I consider him to be the most successful man who ever lived. And he has given each and every one of you talents. There are some people that are going to take those talents and they're going to use it and double it and triple it and do things that may not look the traditional way. There are others of you that are going to play it safe. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what everyone expects of me. So this is what I'm going to do. if you're a part of that second group, I want to push you a little. Because you have no idea what this God that I know, you have no idea. But I'm coming from this kind of a broken home. But God, I'm not smart enough. But God, there's so much against me. There's so much injustice in this world. It is not fair. But God, do not limit yourself by your inadequacies. Instead, tap into that God who is limitless. Thank you.